Hey, everybody. Let's talk about the media. This is going to be a shorter lecture because you've got quite a bit of stuff in this week's folder to take care of. But I want to give you some basic stuff about the media. So, when we're talking about media, we're also talking about this study of popular culture, which I'm a bit of an expert on. Oh, hang on. Oh, what is this? Oh, I think I showed you this when we talked about gender. Oh, are these my books? I'm sorry. It's so embarrassing when they fly off the shelf and into my hand, and it's super embarrassing. Oh, when I quote myself? Oh, look at that. Oh, here I am. uh, Basically, pop culture is the study of narratives, images, and ideas that circulate in a culture. Pop culture tends to be how we learn norms and values of a society. For a lot of you, here's an example. For a lot of you, you probably learned about stuff happening in society or in culture through some sort of pop culture, media, television, film. Media and television are the same thing. Television, film, movies, documentaries, books, music videos, music in general, theater. Maybe you participated in plays, maybe you watch plays, YouTube videos, advertisements, social media posts, memes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Pop culture is something that we cannot escape, and media is something we can't escape. So when we're talking about sociology of the media, or what makes media sociological, so the mass media is defined as a large-scale organization. Basically, anything that uses one or more technologies to communicate with large groups of people is a mass media. And mass media dominate our mental life of modern society. Mass media is really interesting to sociologists. And if you don't think mass media dominates your mental life, take a piece of media that you love and tell yourself, I'm not going to touch it for 24 hours. So maybe that's your phone because you've got your social media on there. Maybe that's music. Maybe that is you love gaming. Maybe you love television, and see what it sort of does to your mental health. Mass media makes its way into our lives, usually whether we like it or not. So when we're talking about theory, symbolic interaction is interested in the ways media affects our daily life. There was a statistic, I don't know if it's updated or not, but about 10 years ago, a woman named Jean Kilbourne did a very famous series of documentaries called Killing Us Softly. And she looked at advertisements. And at one point she said that the average person was looking at around 3,000 ads a day. And if you think about how many ads you see in a day, maybe a few less if you're doing stay at home during coronavirus like I am. But just think about how many ads you see on your social media. I have bought tons of stuff on Instagram because they've put a targeted ad at me, and I'm like, Instagram, you figured me out, right? Think about ads you see on social media, ads you see through content like YouTube content, streaming content. Even if you get Hulu without ads, there are still some channels that require you to watch commercials. Just think about how much you see. Even if you do magazines, if you do any sort of print media, you're going to see ads. This is what symbolic interaction is interested in. How does media make its way into our lives and affect us every day? Structural functionalist theory says that mass media is important because it is functional, right? It gives us the news, it gives us entertainment, it gives us socialization. And conflict theory looks at how people in power can control or manipulate media and the public. A really great example of this are any sort of fake news channels and websites that you see, especially stuff that becomes really relevant on Facebook. People make the joke that like stuff that your crazy uncle posts on Facebook that's like a conspiracy theory. Conflict theory is interested in that. How do people and why do people feel the need to post things, and who's controlling and manipulating them to make them feel like this is relevant? And also, how do people in media manipulate and control what we see? One kind of interesting example of this is anytime there's a hurricane, if for those of us who are watching this and who are living in Florida, anytime there's a hurricane, you see a lot of stock footage start to pop up on different news websites. And some of it is just to illustrate what hurricanes can do, but sometimes it's to sort of make you think this is what's happening. There was a video that went viral a few years ago of a news reporter standing in what he said was hurricane-like conditions, and he was sort of like pushing up against the wind and like really holding his hat down and really struggling with how heavy the wind was. And then in the background, you see just two guys casually stroll past him like nothing is wrong, right? That's sort of what conflict theory is getting at. Even if you think about news channels, and certain news channels are created specifically to manipulate and control the people that are watching them. So all the content on there is to sort of entice that group of people and to keep them in the mindset that that news channel wants them to have. When we're talking about media industries, there is a trend toward what's called a conglomerate or conglomeration. This is when a single company acquires ownership of sort of a lot of different types of businesses. Sometimes they're related, sometimes they're not. But it should not shock you to find out that like 4 or 5 different media industries control pretty much everything that we see and hear, and in some cases think. Another trend is to have a number of mergers. This is when you see 2 companies merged in order to get maximum profits. You saw this with T-Mobile and Sprint, right? One of them buying the other. This is a merger. So the question becomes, does media affect us? And when we talk about media, we talk about what are called passive and active audiences. And with this, we talk about magic bullet theory. So basically, magic bullet theory says that media consumers tend to be pretty passive and pretty uncritical recipients of content. In other words, it's this. How many of you just passively scroll through news, through your timelines? Actually, scrolling is more like this. How do you just passively scroll through media on your phones or through on your computers? How many of you hear commercials in the background and don't even register what they are? But if somebody were to like sing the jingle, you could probably repeat back a few lines, right? Like I'm a certain age, I'm 40, and I can still sing to you vintage McDonald's commercials from the 80s. Like one of the ways they sold the Big Mac was to all beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. Those of you who are sleeping were just like, what's going on right now? What is she doing? Yeah, that's magic bullet theory. In other words, we like to watch cats on the internet, right? We like to kind of have this passive relationship with our media content. Active audience theory looks at the way that we interpret media. Basically, active audience theory is kind of like, I'm going to use social media as another example, but active audience theory is kind of like those people that get into fights in social media, right? Who like really just sort of have at each other. And you're just sort of with popcorn, like, this is interesting. I'm going to watch this for a little bit. It's this social need that a media will fulfill. It's also, if you get really attached to like a character on a television show. When the finale of Friends aired in 2004, I was watching it, and the city I was living in at the time, there was a really severe thunderstorm coming through. And back when television was live, there was a ticker that came across the bottom of the screen, and it said severe thunderstorm, blah, blah, blah area, watch for tornadoes in this such and such area. And then at the end of the ticker, it said, we will not interrupt the finale of Friends unless it's a life or death situation. So, I mean, that's active audience theory, right? This connection, this way you're feeling connected to your media. So much so that a news organization was like, hey, we're not going to interrupt the finale of Friends for anything unless like you're going to die. So that's what active audience is getting at. Okay, so that's what I have to say about media. Move on to the next video that I have introducing the rest of the stuff that you're going to do. Bye.